Hello everyone, in today's video we're going to be taking a look at dropping bombs on ships. Now you're probably saying, hey, wait a minute, that sounds a little on the nosy. Well, there's reasons for it. For today's exercise, we're not going to be looking at trying to drop guided bombs onto ships. Obviously, if you have a laser designator, it's pretty easy going as far as popping a ship. Instead, we're going to concentrate on the good old-fashioned unguided variety. So let's take a look at our little scenario here. So we have the handy-dandy Admiral Kuznetsov. The reason I went for this particular vessel is because it's very obvious from long distance because of the black smoke coming at it. No, the reason I picked this one is because it's long and it's also, fairly skinny. It also moves pretty quick when it has to, kind of a thing like that. So we're going to go ahead and attack it and look at kind of the different variables that are going into attacking. First things first, though, before I do get too carried away, the ship is set to blind, so it will not return fire here. So the returning fire aspect of this is not going to be explored too much. And if you want to know what this is just a P8. He's just helping me out as far as identifying where we are here. So the first things first, what kind of bomb do we want to drop on a ship? One of the things you got to watch out for is if I actually come over here to the Kuznetsov and actually hit the button here, you're going to notice that it has an interesting little database entry. I'll scroll down a little bit. And a lot of times what you'll detect is they'll have armor in different parts of the ship. For example, you can see our belt armor is between 91 and 140 millimeters RHA. Engineering's pretty good. And the big thing is it has no deck armor. This is a really important piece of information for us because it tells us that if we hit it at a low angle and strike the side of the ship, our bombs are going to have to work a lot harder to do damage than if we dump one right down the middle. Now, if you pop over to a CVN real quick, CNV, it's a new kind of third time is the charm. All right, let's do carrier. Nope, this would not be a carrier. This would be conventional. Let's try a CVN. Oh, I see it's over here. It's hidden. You have to look carefully. CVN, there we go. Let's grab the Enterprise real quick. You can take a look. It's got the belt armor, but no deck armor as well. As a matter of fact, if you want ships with deck armor, you're going to have to go back way, 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 way back. I don't even think this... Oh, it does. We're going to have to go back a few years, and you can see that they actually do have deck armor on some ships. This has a really, really big impact on our attack. It tells us that if we want to do a lot of damage, we're going to have to come through the top. We can't come down the side. Obviously, depending on defensive arrangements and things like that, we have to consider that possibility as well. Keep in mind, with most modern vessels, defensive arrangements are designed to basically attack very effectively out the sides of the ship, which means for this particular strike, we know ideally we'd probably be coming up the back of the ship because if there was a little missile launcher, like it's a frigate or something, it would probably be a forward-facing missile launcher. Of course, not everything's a VLS, and it doesn't matter. But again, thinking about that aspect of the geometry is going to have a big impact on it. All right, the second thing we need to consider is the weapon we're dropping here. So in this case, our little A4Ns, we're equipping a Mark 82 low-drag bombs. The advantage of the Mark 82, of course, is it does have quite a bit of bang to it. Obviously, we go with a bigger bomb, but the disadvantage to bigger bombs is now we are going to drop less of them. So the philosophy or the question becomes, do we want a really, really big bomb but have a chance of missing, or do we want a little bomb and have a chance of basically hitting the target? And that's really going to depend on the size of the target itself. As the target gets bigger, in this case we have a carrier, it's much, much easier to go ahead and switch to a big bomb here because you're more likely to hit the target. If you're dealing with something like a frigate, you need to drop as many bombs as you can. So next we're going to take a look at the geometry of our attack here. So we know we're going to be striking this target from the front. It's very, very tempting to come in at a low altitude and try to do a pop-up and drop. You definitely will have to do that in situations where you're going to be dealing with a lot of defensive fire, or for example, from the Falklands, and we know we have a big mountain right here. We're going to hide and go boing and do our little drop real quick. But for us, we're going to go right down the deck, except we're going to change things just a tiny bit here. So let me go ahead and unpause here and start getting lined up. So when you attack this target, especially a long flat target like this, you actually want to hit it at an oblique. The reason you want to hit it at an oblique is if I actually switch my game, I'm going to do something so naughty here. Let's go to a map display. Oh, this feels so wrong. Much better. So if you notice, if we were to attack this thing dead on, we were actually going to have to make sure all of our bombs hit on the same axis of the target. If we try to pull something like that, the downside to that, of course, is if there's a wind coming from the south or the north, and we go right down the deck, all the bombs will land either to the port or starboard side. So what we do instead is we actually are going to design our stack of bombs to bracket the ship at a slight oblique angle. For those of you who are familiar with striking bombs on bridges, it's the same exact philosophy as attacking a ship. We're actually going to design it so that our stack comes across it versus beyond it. So one thing I really do have to do to this guy, though, he's up at us pretty high right now. Let's go drop them down to something a little bit lower here. We're actually going to go even lower than that. We'll say a little under 10,000 feet. Anything past 10,000 feet with traditional sights, and good luck. I don't think you're going to strike anything, in my opinion. One of the fun things, though, of course, is I do play a good amount of DCS. And when you have really, really modern sights like CCIP, and you can punch in the correct winds and everything, I can plink a ship from 16,000 feet, like with any bomb that I drop. You're not going to be able to achieve that in command, even with really, really high sophisticated aircraft here. All right, let's go ahead and drop down to our target altitude here. And again, when you hit the oblique here, we're just trying to do it at a gentle angle. We're not trying to go, 45 degrees or anything like that. We're basically just trying to zip across the deck. Remember also the aircraft itself takes a moment to turn. So when you calculate your oblique here, you have to make sure that you don't overdo it. So I'm going to go ahead and get out of God's eye mode here. Go ahead and select hit. And of course, when we drop our bombs, it's very tempting to go ahead and dump them all. If we do that, of course, if we miss a lot. But if we miss a lot if we drop them all. But of course, that also means we're only in the line of fire of the defensive weaponry ones, which really has a big impact here. So, okay, we're going to go ahead and line ourselves up. And our goal here is to make it so that our stack of bombs, there it is right there, hits right on the oblique. So now if you want to visualize this in 3D, unfortunately, I don't think we're going to get a good view of this, but we'll try anyway. Our stack of bombs is like a straight line. Very difficult to see. Unfortunately, let me go grab the Kuznetsov here. Can we see the stack of bombs? I don't think we can see it as well as we can in DCS. No. So if you want to imagine it, it's a straight line like this. So when we drop that straight line, we have to make sure that straight line, as it hits, it's going to hit in its own line. So if we actually zoom in a little bit here, you can see that little tiny angle is going to make it so that that line, when it crosses the ship, is going to cross it like this. Wow. Wow, I don't think I could have asked for a better shot than that. That was really sweet. I don't know exactly how many of those hit, but wow. Did it go through the deck? Yeah, I think almost every single one of these went through the deck. It casually went through the armor there, and did one heck of a lot of damage. That was a sweet hit. I'm actually kind of proud of that. Like, usually those shots aren't nearly that clean. If we go over to the ship itself, we can now take a look at how much damage we caused here. And take a look at my damage control. Yeah, I got one of the radars. I got one of the missiles. No big deal. Smashed up a radar. Again, not that much damage. Remember, these ships are pretty darn big. So even though we did a really, really nice shot here and we bracketed the ship almost perfectly, it just didn't have the kick that we needed to do real damage. So let's go ahead and change our strategy a little bit and kind of see what's going to change when we approach it from a different way. All right, so now we have a slightly different way to approach this. So what we've done is we've taken the same exact aircraft and we've reduced the number of bombs on it, but instead of doing those little tiny kind of 500-pound pop guns, we're going to hit it with something that's got a little more kick here. On this particular aircraft, we're carrying our loadout is Mark 83s, which is a much, much bigger bomb. It's actually one of my favorite sized weapons because it just makes sense to me, but you'll actually notice we're carrying a mix of 82s and 83s. So let's go ahead and use the same technique we did last time and see if this extra little bit of kick makes a difference for us. Manual override, 10,000 please. Give it a second to go ahead and start its descent. Perfect. So we're going to use the same technique we used last time. We're going to go ahead and try to hit it pretty much dead on here. We don't want to do too much of an angle because we're not dropping a very, very tall stack of bombs here. We're only dropping 4. So we have to make sure we hit it right the first time kind of a thing. 1, 2, and 3, 4. Whoops, apparently I've allocated many, 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 many of those. All right, we're closing into range there. Don't mind that screen. All right, it looks pretty good. We're going to have a little bit of angle. I'm actually going to have to pull my strike point up just a little bit here to give him just a little more time to kind of put himself at a little bit of an angle. Remember, we're dropping a total of 4 weapons here, so that's going to be a little bit more. I'll actually back it up just a little bit. Get that turn started, maybe even a little early there. Coming in, he's going to start his turn. Now remember, we're packing 2 regular 82s into much, much bigger Mark 83s here. All right, he breaks off. That's 10,000 foot. Obviously, if I were the ship, I'd be pulling to the right or the left. I'd be pulling right as hard as I can go right now. But again, we'll see exactly what happens. Here they come. Ready, set, and whoa. Ooh! You can see we did everything but strike the target. We had a couple splash back here, and then we had the bigger ones kind of splash off the side. So you can immediately see we scored no damage whatsoever. So you're probably sitting there going, well, it is pretty difficult to kind of take that shot across the bow like that. What if you try to hit it from the side? Well, it's a slightly different philosophy. All right, so now what we've done is we tweak things a little bit to more what people think of as the traditional ship strike. Now, if we're going to pull off this traditional shot like this, we really have to keep in mind the fact that as we're doing this, our probability of hitting is going to drop because of the fact that if we miss with one, we basically miss with all of them as they go. Well, actually, I can't say that. It could be better than that. You're not going to hit as many bombs on the target just because of the physics of the shot itself. The other thing you have to think about with a shot like this now is we're now dealing with the problem that we're going to be going right into the strongest defensive fire that you can possibly be engaged with at this time. And you're also going to be attacking the ship at its thickest part of its armor along its belt here. So we're going to do it anyway to kind of demonstrate this. Let's go ahead and get out of God's eye view here. Shift F1, click on this. 2 bombs of those, 2 of those, please. And that should be beautiful there. So what we're doing is we're basically skimming across the water at very low altitude. Actually, we're not at the moment. I got to get us even lower. It's worth noting that if you're going to do a very, very low altitude, basically pop-up attack like this, double check to see what altitude your weapon can be utilized at. I can't tell you how many times I've basically gone over the top of a target because I can't drop the bomb. So if we actually go onto this, you can see it has a minimum launch altitude of 1,000 feet above ground level. That's really important because if we're less than 1,000 feet, like we are right now, we can't actually drop the weapon. So what you can do is you can come in at like 500 feet and pop up at the last second and drop, which works great, or you can try to get a little closer. Another advantage to this particular attack is you're going to have a better chance of hitting the target on account of the fact that your aircraft itself is going to be, you don't have as much distance for the bombs to travel, so the wind and weather is not going to affect you as aggressively here. All right, getting close. We're about 1,000 feet above ground level. There they go. Bombs away, and this guy's going to go right over the top of the deck, which is ironically one of the safer places to fly. As weird as that sounds. Let's see how we do here. Ooh! Let's see how that worked. Let's go ahead and unpause. Looks like the 1,000 missed, the 1,000 missed, the 500 missed. 2 of the 500s did click. The other 2 did not. And we can see we did get through the armor penetration here. I'd have to switch it back to old-fashioned mode here to actually read the exact amount of penetration that we got. Let's see here. What is that? 34%? That's not bad. So about half the bomb actually got through the armor, which not terrible. Not terrible. Let's go switch sides real quick and take a look at the other guy. So hopping onto him real fast, we can see, let's see here, 5%. So that damage was abysmal. The armor basically sucked it all up, and I don't think, it did no real damage. So you can already see because that we just did not have the firepower to get through it, it just was not nearly as effective of a weapon. And we don't even have any fire or anything like that. So thanks for the bomb, jerk. It's just kind of one of those things. So it's really important that you think about the geometry of those shots when you're taking them. Now, some of you are like, is there such thing as an extreme bombing run? Well, the answer is yes. This is the B-52H. It's one of my preferred bombing platforms here. There's just something incredible to think about a plane that was designed in the 1950s that will probably see about 100 years service. It's kind of like the Tupolev 95. Now, this aircraft is not what I would consider much of a naval strike aircraft, especially against a moving target. But it doesn't change the fact that we're going to use it that way because I'm like that. So I'm going to go ahead and press Shift F1 here. Woo, can't do that, I guess. Let me close this video out before it gets all mad at me in a second. Whoa, I knew it was going to do that. So let's go ahead and hit Shift F1, click on that guy. And yes, I'd like all 45 of my low drag general purpose bombs to be dumped on the deck here. So I'm actually going to have to kind of get a little bit closer here. We're going to have to monitor altitudes carefully. Obviously, it takes a little while to get down from 27,000 feet. Please do not use a B-52 in this fashion. It will get slapped out of the sky by Sea Whiz and Point Defense and pretty much everything under the sun that can possibly engage. So it looks like our my endpoint was pretty darn close here. It was not perfect, but again, I'm guesstimating here as I'm doing this. All right, we're coming up to that point. Oh, this is going to be entertaining to watch. And we're about to get the longest stick of bombs I think ever dropped on an aircraft carrier. I know that they have tried to use level bombers against aircraft carriers. It is a thing. It just doesn't work well typically. All right, we'll go and do this, my little bleak. That looks pretty good. Make sure one last time that they're working. Oh, yeah, it's working beautifully. I can just imagine the crew here sitting there looking out the window going, is that a B-52? Yeah, it seems to be making a pass at us. A pass, you say? Yes. 45 Mark 82s. All right, B-52, you've had a very fun day. Go home. Now, the interesting thing here is that is a very long stack, which also means that if the bottom of that stack is a little offset, let's say it's a little over here, the entire stack is going to make a beautiful straight line and not do... See what I mean? Well, I bet you that woke the crew of the Kuznetsov up a little bit here. Let's see how we did. Me, sweet. Not bad. That was definitely when I think of a B-52 strike, that's how I visualize that typically. All right, let's take a look at what we did. Nothing. Remember that first plane that we dropped at like just at the sweet altitude, and it basically went right across the deck and did an enormous amount of damage? Yeah, that one is the winner for doing the most amount of damage to the ship so far. So you can see a total damage, nothing. And again, the reason it didn't really do any damage is because all those bombs basically landed over here in the water and just sort of shock damaged into the armor plating where it's basically the strongest, which as you can see, it did not do much damage to it. So hopefully this helps you out as far as striking ships goes. The key thing is you got to remember that you have to hit the part of the ship where the armor is weakest, or you have to use a big enough bomb where it doesn't matter. And of course, I'm saying big enough bomb that doesn't matter. I'm like, well, what happens if you do this? I know what you're thinking. You're probably saying, hey, you're about to commit a war crime, and I probably am, but unfortunately, this is an important thing we need to discover here, and that's what happens if you try to drop a very, very, very large bomb on the target. And it wasn't nuclear. I thought about nuclear for a second there, and I almost did it. But then I realized we have something called the GBU-43, which is a much more amusing weapon to drop on an aircraft carrier. So, let's line the sucker up. It looks pretty clean right there. A little tiny oblique is probably not recommended. I really should just be hitting it from the side. Let's go ahead and slow down time here. Shift F1, click on the target. Oh, apparently that's not a valid target? Well, in that case, I'm just going to drop it right off the nose here. Pause. Drop it right here. Actually, what we want to do is we want to fly. We need to drop the fly the plane right up to where we're going to drop the bomb here. It's the only way we can safely do this. Looks pretty good. Really should do the math before trying to do something like this, but well, what are you going to do? And that's going to be beautiful. I want it to Control F1 because we're doing a manual drop here. We're going to put it right there. Oh, wait a minute. I think that is not a BOL capable weapon. Oh, well. Is it going to drop it? Nah. So it will not let me do that. Oh, well. Stuff happens. All right, so unfortunately that weapon did not work, but there's other solutions. Of course, there's guided missiles and torpedoes and things like that. But again, you were able to kind of see the general concept. So what are the takeaways here? The first thing is you have to keep in mind, like I said, where the armor is. If you're using little bombs, you're not doing anybody any justice if you're hitting the part of the part of the ship that is going to not do anything. So if we come at low altitude and we're hitting right into the side of the armor, nothing's going to happen. Again, this applies not just to carriers. This applies to anybody with weapons like this. The other thing we have to think about, too, is when we drop our bombs, if we use a little bomb, we are more likely to hit the target, but we're less likely to do more damage, and vice versa. The other thing we can think about, too, is if we're dropping all those bombs at the same exact time, what we're doing is if we miss with that first one, you could see with the B-52 how that entire stack missed. One of my mistakes with my bomb drop there was I didn't put nearly enough oblique on the angle so that I could cut that across that deck and saw it in half. But other than that, enjoy.